Why are you saying this now? Are you saving yourself for a different office that might be?
No.
Well, that was former Vice President Kamala Harris on Late Show with Stephen Colbert in her first interview since the 2024 election. Follows her announcement that she will not run for governor of her home state of California. Harris also announced plans to publish a new memoir titled 107 Days that gives a behind-the-scenes look at her historic campaign for the presidency. The former VP was philosophical about her future during an appearance on The Late Show.
Recently, I made the decision that for now, I don't want to go back in the system. I think it's broken. I want to travel the country. I want to listen to people. I want to talk with people. And I don't want it to be transactional where I'm asking for their vote.
All right, joining us now is Jasmine Wright, reporter for Notice, and Maya Rupert, a political strategist and former presidential campaign manager for Julian Castro. Thank you two both for joining us. Really appreciate it. Maya, what do you make of Kamala Harris coming out in this fashion, having a book, but of course not saying she's going to run for governor, leaving the door open potentially for a future office?
Right. I mean, I think this gives her really exactly what she was talking about during that interview, right? It's the opportunity she's obviously going to travel with the book. She's saying she also wants to travel, talk to people, listen to them directly, and have it not be transactional. I thought that was important because I do think one of the critiques that she had faced is that people didn't get a chance to see sort of a more real version of her. It seems like she's kind of nodding to, I want to give voters the chance to hear from me as a person. Clearly, she'll make a bigger decision about what she's going to do later, but that does feel like it's at least responsive to something that we heard on the campaign trail.
You know, Jasmine, there are so many questions I want to ask you, and too bad I'm not on set to be there to ask you. So I'm just going to throw a dart at the board and play this sound of part of her interview with Stephen Colbert, where he read off a litany of things that she told the American people would happen, and they are now happening. And he gave her an opportunity to say, I told you so. But watch how she responded.
You are correct that I did predict a lot of it. But, Stephen, what I did not predict was the capitulation. I didn't predict that. I believed that on some level, you know, there should be many who consider themselves to be guardians of our system and our democracy who just capitulated. And I didn't see that coming.
Now, Jasmine, you, Eugene, and I have covered the vice president closely. And when I heard her say that, to me, what I heard was disappointment. Like, she is really disappointed by the American system. This is an example of why she says it's broken.
And maybe CBS that she was on.
Yeah, I mean,
she did the interview.
I think it was all just very kind of programmed the way she did it. Look, I think that, yes, she's disappointed. Obviously, the context here is not just her role, but also she has a husband, Doug Emhoff, who works for one of the law firms that are one that made that early deal with Donald Trump, a part of that capitulation. And we know that he was upset about that. And so I think that there's a lot that she can pull from. But frankly, Jonathan, I mean, you know, I may get kind of booed for saying this.
I'm ready.
I think that interview was a real missed opportunity for the vice president.
Oh.
I think that she what is required of her in this moment after what a kind of grueling and torturous result was in 2024 is this radical honesty. And I think that capitulation answer is maybe a start to it. But people want to hear not just what systems and institutions that she believes are broken within the government, but also are broken within the Democratic Party. That was potentially a result or a part of why she had the outcome that she had in 2024. She spent 4 years in a White House that a lot of times demonized her, that degraded her. There is nobody, more responsible for the tarnishing of her reputation. Yes, Republicans had a lot to do with it, but so did her own party. And so I think that there's a lot of the systems, not just the institutions in America, that she could talk to. And I don't think that interview hit the mark.
You know,
I wonder if it's in the book. But go on, sorry.
That's exactly what. Maybe
Can I
it's in
have
the
some
book.
excerpts,
Look,
please?
and we want excerpts immediately. If
I
you're
want
watching,
names.
man. Exactly. names and pictures, please. Maya, I want to go to you because I was talking to someone in Harris World, and they said what they saw from this interview was Harris trying to paint herself as someone who can run as an outsider in 2028, right? Talking about, the system being broken. I don't want to be a part of that system. It will be difficult for Vice President, someone who's a former senator, to run in that way. But what did you read into that as well?
Absolutely. I think there's going to be a desire for everyone running in 2028 to be running as an outsider, right? To be running as somebody sort of from outside the system who can come in and right the ship. That is going to be a very difficult thing to do for someone who has held the positions that she's had. But that is very clearly something, it seems like, I think that would be valuable to try to set up.
I think I was talking to somebody very close to her too, and they were like, look, this is a woman who has for 20 years been very vocal that she believes that more can be attained if you work through the system. Yep. Yes, in tandem with folks on the outside, but it is incredibly important for you to be in the system and have a perch of power so you can effectuate the most changes. So I think it is a striking message from her, but I think there has to be more honesty to actually talk about what is going wrong. And again, I don't know if that.
Let me, Maya, back to you for a second, because it's not just within and without the system. I think, as you know, Democrats don't like their own party. And they also are a little bit upset with the fact that the elder generation let them down and led them to this moment. She's not of the elder generation, but she served with the elder generation. There are two things that strike me as difficult for her going forward. One is the association with Biden. The other, and I want to be frank about this, not her fault at all, is she's a woman. And two female candidates for president ran and lost against Donald Trump. There's going to be some hesitation about running a third female candidate in 2028. Can you address those two hurdles and how significant they are in the modern Democratic psyche?
Highly qualified women, I want to put it.
Fair enough. It is what it is.
Qualified women. Yes. Look, I think the question of Biden is going to be a big one. She won't be the only one having to answer that question.
Everyone will have to answer
everyone running in 2028 who had significant roles in that administration are going to have to respond to, what did you know? Why weren't you the one willing to speak truth to power? Obviously, it's going to be different for her, but there are ways, and again, depending on how she wants to distance herself from that administration, there are ways for her to, say.
Well, she didn't do it correctly during the campaign.
She didn't do it during the campaign, and I think, and again, I think there are ways to address that. I think there is a way to say, running as the sitting vice president in a time where, things are, the global politics are what they are, you don't necessarily want to create a lot of distance and create that dynamic where people are saying, oh, well, if she's, there were sort of safety reasons she might have wanted to make sure it was clear there's one administration deciding the direction of this country.
It also wouldn't have been believable because she was currently serving in the administration.
Right.
She didn't say any daylight between them at the time. And most importantly, this is something I talked to a lot of black women, you probably did too, during the process, was a black woman saying, I'm not with him anymore. There would be some backlash from a lot of voters that she wasn't loyal enough. And so they were thinking about that as well.
But I do think that they found carve-outs after that View interview where she said, I wouldn't change a thing, and everybody was like, huh? And then, and then she was asked it multiple more times. I do think that they found carve-outs to say it. The problem is that it didn't come in time, and there are literally polls, including some that the Trump campaign had, that showed just how, it didn't change necessarily the trajectory of the election, but it certainly changed the sentiment in some people's minds. And it led to less excitement when she said that The View. So I think that they found a decent amount of distance from him, but it just came too far into the campaign.
Yeah, and it wasn't enough. Well, Jasmine and Maya, thank you so much for joining us.